Hello, hello, hello. Just going to give a minute or two. Good day, good evening, wherever you are. It's so good to be here tonight. Well, it's evening here in South Africa, so good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are. Just going to give a moment for people to hop on. So, my name is Taryn, for those of you that don't know, and I am CEO and founder of Wildflower Healing. And I was in a session with a client today, and the 5 love languages came up, and I just thought, wow, what a great topic. I just love speaking about the 5 love languages. So, welcome to the coffee call. I'm having tea, not really much of a coffee drinker, especially not this time of the evening. So you're welcome to just get relaxed and just be open to receiving. You might be aware of the 5 love languages, and I might just give you a little bit of insight that you may not have thought of. Or maybe the 5 love languages is something you've heard of but never really explored. So for me, most of what I really put my energy behind are on things that have really impacted my life. So I am a Sophia Circle facilitator because the Sophia Code impacted my life in a profound way. I'm an Akashic record reader, consultant, again because Akashic Records really impacted my life. And same with 5 love languages. So if you've hopped on and you laugh, drop me a hi in the comments. I'd love to say hello to you. And even where you're from would be awesome. So the 5 love languages. Now there are so many books out there by Dr. Gary Chapman. There are 5 love languages for children, teenagers, singles, couples, marriages, apology, love languages, all of that. So I'm just going to chat briefly on what the 5 love languages are and how I've interpreted them, and just give you some real life examples in my own life. So there is physical touch, acts of service, gifts, quality time, and words of affirmation. And you know, Dr. Gary Chapman's teachings on the 5 languages really speaks in a universal language for me. And so because we're in a coffee call, I'm just going to humor myself and just explain the love languages in a coffee way. So for physical touch, you would feel, let me warm you, let me hold you like a coffee. So that's physical touch. We really want to touch into the person and make them feel like they're really good, really feel loved. Then we have acts of service. So here I've made you a cup of coffee. Gifts. Well, here's your cup of coffee, and I remembered that you don't like sugar and you prefer almond milk with your coffee. Because gifts goes beyond just receiving and getting something. I'm a gifts love language. So flowers are wonderful to receive, but if you buy me yellow flowers, in particular yellow roses, then I'm like, wow, you do know what I like and who I am, and that is more impactful. Like one yellow rose is more impactful than a bunch of arbitrary flowers that there's no thought in that. Then there's quality time. So let's go for a cup of coffee, you and me. Let's just the two of us go and spend some time together. And then we've got words of affirmation. So your coffee is the best. Your coffee is delicious. So there's many ways that love languages can impact our lives. So yeah, if you're on the call, just drop me a hi. I'd love to say hello to you tonight. So we can use the love languages for self-care. We can use the languages for any and all relationships, particularly with our spouses, with people that we really love and care for, our children. And that's one of the main reasons why I actually hopped on today, is really to provide some insight so that we can really hold our children during this time. You know, Dr. Gabor Mate says in The Wisdom of Trauma that it's not the pain that a child has gone through that creates trauma, it's being alone with that pain. So if we can truly understand our children from a different level and provide them with feeling loved during this time, that possibly the pain of what we're going through as, you know, humanity won't be so traumatic on them. So that was really my intention for hopping on with the 5 love languages. But it's going to affect any relationship. You can even use it for business. Like, what a better way as a boss for your employees, for you to show appreciation to colleagues and in particular to clients. Like, if we could really understand our clients on a deeper level, we can really speak their language and make them feel like their business is important to us. And then we have an apology style, which I believe is really linked to love languages. And we also respond when we're upset, I believe, in our love language. And how we discipline children should also be determined by their love language. Because if we are going to create consequences for them, but we're going to do it in their love language, we're going to deeply wound them in their core love, felt sense. And to me, that's not what we're here for. We're here to create cause and effect and create boundaries, but we're not here to damage or wound or deeply affect our children. So there's various, you know, you're welcome to research 5 love languages. I've put the link in the comments, in the description, shall I say, on taking a quiz. But how you react, so one of the ways that I can really quickly determine if what someone's love language is how the way that they react or respond when they're really upset. So for me, one would retract your language of love when you're really upset and when you've been triggered, because in that moment there's no felt love. Like, there is always that love underneath, but there's no felt love and there's no expression of love because you've been triggered and you're upset. So for me, I'm acts of service and I'm a gifts love language. So if I'm busy making supper, for example, and I get triggered and I need to get obviously really triggered and really upset, I will abandon making supper. And that's not because I'm selfish or spiteful, but in that particular moment of being triggered and upset, I cannot then display my language of love. So obviously with my children, I'll make sure that they are eating, you know, they'll have supper, but I'm talking particularly with partners. So if I'm just making a meal for my partner, myself, and he triggers me in particular, then I'll abandon supper just because in that moment I cannot show him love. And acts of service and gifting is the way I show my love. So we naturally show our love in the language that we are. So the way we are with people when we truly want to show our appreciation is a clear sign of our love language. And then how we retract that when we're upset will also show us our love language. So someone that will take themselves outside of the situation, sort of create distance, that's potentially a quality times love language person. If someone becomes silent, gives you the silent treatment, and or gets very critical and throws harsh words at you, those are usually words of affirmation people. So I've just got some notes to keep me on track today. Otherwise, I'll go all over the place. And so just on apologies. So it's been interesting for myself to navigate how we apologize in our love language. So I remember a particular case with my partner. We'd obviously upset each other, and I wanted to reach out and apologize, but I'm not a words of affirmation, and I'm not a physical touch love language. So we have different rankings, and we always have like 2, maybe 3 that are at the top, and then we have the lower ones. So possibly my lowest ones are your physical touch and words of affirmation, and they happen to be his highest ranking love language. So we kind of miss each other in that respect. And so I went to go and apologize to him, and I took him a cup of coffee in the morning. and I had bought his favorite rusks, and I had brought up his rusks and his cup of coffee. And that was my way of apologizing, because I was apologizing in my love language. And he completely dismissed me and kind of rejected me because I was not apologizing in his love language. Being physical touch and words of affirmation, for me to appease my own love language, taking him his cup of coffee and his rusks would make me feel like I am genuine with my apology in his language. For him to receive the apology, if I had just like squeezed his toe on the way, because he's lying in bed, so it's a morning cup of coffee. If I had just squeezed his toe or rubbed his shoulder when I placed the coffee down, and then if I had uttered the words, "I am sorry," that would have made him more responsive, because I would then be speaking an apology in his love language. So can you see how we can just miss each other, not because we want to, and not because we don't care for the person, but because we just maybe don't understand their level of language, of love, and our own. And especially in a family dynamic, it is so easy to love a family member when they have the same love language. So we're going to love in our language, and if it's their love language, well, we're going to have a really solid connection, because we keep feeding each other. So they feel loved, and then they love back, and they feel, and then I feel loved and I love back. And then there's just this beautiful synergy that happens between the two. But the challenging part is when you are worlds apart, whether it's with your child or your partner or someone that you care about, is when your ranking love language, and you just don't think. Like I've had to teach myself after 14 or 15 years in a relationship that physical touch is important. Holding hands, just those gentle touches can mean so much, but because it's not something that's natural to me, I have to give it thought, and I have to give it conscious awareness. And this is particularly important with our children, because I've heard, and there's no judgment, and it's only through the love languages that I'm aware of this, is that there's so many parents that say, well, I've got 4 or 5 children and I love them all the same. I've shown them the same amount of love, but there's one, or, Bob and Mary Jane, that, just don't seem to resonate with my love, or they've turned out like X, Y, and Z, or they, passive aggressive towards me, or whatever it might be. And that's because each child will have a different love language. And where it becomes very sticky and tricky is that when you have a connection with one child that possibly is your own love language, or one of the higher ranking is the same as yours, then there's always like, oh, well, that's mom's favorite, or, oh, mom has a better connection with so-and-so, I can't mean anything. And it's not the case. It just means that we are loving in our love language and they're not feeling it. So for my 2 children, my oldest is quality times and my youngest is gifts. And so I have to treat them differently. Yes, I can take my youngest out for a quality time, like a movie or something, and he would really enjoy it, but it won't necessarily fill up his love language tank. And we also have to bear in mind that there is a mommy tank and there's a daddy tank, especially with children. Like, I can't overdo a love language to try and compensate for dad, and dad can't overcompensate for me. If we don't have a masculine or feminine, um, caretaker in a child's um, growing up years, then it's to find an uncle or a friend that can possibly fill up the love language tank in that department. So just, yeah, it's just to get creative with our own unique situations. So um, I'm just checking my notes. And it's like the other day, last week, my oldest, I needed to have a very serious conversation about school and about, putting a little bit more effort in. And if I just picked him up from school and got home and went straight into that, I don't believe he would have been as receptive as when I picked him up. I'm like, we're going to go. He loves going for quality time. He loves going for an afternoon milkshake and a plate of chips or whatever. And I'm like, it's quality time today, my boy. And he was like, wow, oh, okay, mom. And his whole face beamed up. I didn't know, that was a surprise. And that's the other thing with love languages. If a person has to ask for something in their love language, it diminishes the impact by 50%. So if he had got to a stage where, mom, when are we having quality time? We haven't had it in forever. When I would have done it straight after, the next couple of days, then it would have lessened the impact. Whereas I picked him up and it was a surprise and his whole face lit up. And we went and I could have a very serious conversation in a way that he's already feeling loved and he was more receptive. And it was a really good conversation that we had together. And then what I often do with my children is I actually ask them, do you feel loved? It's one thing to know that I love you, that I'm showing it in my way, that I'm saying it possibly every day, what have you, but do you feel that I love you? And children are pretty honest and they will say yes or no. My children have told me, no, I don't feel loved. And I'm like, wow, okay, well, we need to change that. And we need to look at, what are these things that we can do for each other. So loving in your love language is easy. To be very mindful of what our children's love language is and really meet them at that space. And to know that in the foundation years of a child up to about 5 or 6, we should be actually fulfilling all of their 5 love languages because they haven't really determined themselves what it is. So we should be filling up all the physical touch, words of affirmation, gifts, acts of service, and quality time. We should be giving all of that. And we should be giving that to everyone, but knowing that if somebody's higher ranking love languages, really concentrate on that because everyone likes to receive a little bit of something within the love languages. And so I'm just again checking my notes. Discipline, right? Discipline in the love languages for our children. Remember, this whole intent of today is to really get to know ourselves better, to get to know our partners better, so that our partnership relationships, people that we care about, even business partnerships, clients can be really strong. But my whole intent was for children today, so I want to just spend a little bit more time on children and love languages, because discipline is such a hot topic, and I'm not here judging anyone. I'm not here saying that you have to do this, that, we all have our road to walk as parents, and there is no manual that truly fits any one of us perfectly. But from my understanding, my interpretation is we don't want to discipline our child in a language that is their love language, because that is going to deeply impact their heart and deeply impact a wounding. So if a child is physical touch, giving them a hiding is really, really damaging. So there's this whole thing. Obviously, we don't want to give our children hidings. And so we'll go, oh, I sent my children to the room. I put my child, in timeout. If your child is a quality times child and you've now banished them from the family, you've separated them from the family, you are going to potentially damage them in their core love language, in their same as a gifts love language. So it's like, oh, well, I don't give my child a hiding. I don't send them to the room. I don't call them bad names, all these things, but I take away their iPad or I take away their phone. If they are a gifts love language child and you take away what was a gift, you are hurting them in their love language. You are potentially damaging them at that core level. So again, we really have to get creative with this, and we again have to understand what is our child's love language. What are those high-ranking love languages that my child feels loved, and then how can I show them that so they feel loved? How can I discipline them, show them cause and effect, consequences that is not going to potentially wound them? And then, because as soon as they get to the teenage years, this is where the impact of not feeling loved comes very dominant. That's when grades start slipping, bedrooms don't get cleaned, passive aggressive behavior sets in. And as you know, because we in that teenage years, things can start really getting out of control. That's when there's the potential risk of that passive aggressiveness to actually come out in drugs, sex, and alcohol. So if we can really start sooner than later understanding what our children need to feel loved and shaping ourselves consciously around that, we boys, like if they physical touch, we can't start giving, like my boys are already at 12 and 7, don't even kiss me goodbye when we get to the car park in the morning, like cheers mom, bye. I don't get hugs anymore and kisses. My little one, when I come to school, he will run up to me and give me a big bear hug. So I just cherish that because I know there's one day that's going to like this and it's gone. So they say like wrestling with your child, if he's a boy, or giving those like, high five or whatever, fist pumps, or we can still create moments of connection in their love language. My oldest is also one of his higher rankings is words of affirmation. So growing up, I would put little notes in his lunchbox, and he loved that. He's now at the age where I did one last week or this week, and I'm like, he goes, yeah. I said, I know. As I put it in, I'm like, this is soon going to end because he's at the age now where it's going to be embarrassing to get him a little love note in his lunchbox from his mom. He goes, yeah, I read it quietly to myself, mom. So I said, yeah, I'm going to have to get creative. Maybe I can put it in your room. And he's like, his whole face again lit up. And he's like, yeah, on my pillow when I get home from school. And like, there's a note there that would like feel really good. So engage with them, see what actually lights them up. And you can see, we know when our children get lit up, with something. At the dinner table the other night with my little one, I'm like, because now I've given the oldest quality time, I now need to balance that. How am I going to show my youngest that I love him in his love language? So I went through a series of elimination. My boy, I know that you love hugs, but also know this is your favorite meal. So when mom, which one would you choose? Which one makes you feel more loved? The big hug from mom or the special meal that I've made? And they will tell you, and then you just start doing those. Like you'll have an idea of what the top ones are. So eliminate the bottom ones and then, go from bottom up. And eventually you'll determine which are the higher ranking love languages. And yeah, I just encourage you to get creative. And self-care. Wow. So now we've spoken a lot about caring for others and showing others love. But my goodness, can you imagine if we start showing ourselves and filling up our own love language? How magical that will be. So things like self-care for physical touch, massages, facials, soft, like I've got a scarf on and it's textured and it's really soft, but soft blankets, giving that really what makes you physically feel good. Then we have acts of service. Arrange something that makes you feel good. It could be a trip somewhere that you've been dying to go to and you really want to, give yourself an act of service. It could be a therapy session. Like that is being an act of service to yourself. Asking for help. So that's the tricky thing with acts of service, because being an act of service, we are always doing for others. That there's often not enough space for others to do for us, and yet we desperately want others to do things for us. But it's to also ask for help when we need it, when we feel like we just need a bit of, run my car to, it would be lovely if our partners actually, if when we acts of service and thought, let me go fill up, like, so an idea, if your partner is an acts of service, I would absolutely love my partner to fill up my petrol tank for me. Doesn't matter if he uses my card or his own money, doesn't matter. That's not the point. But if you had to actually, I noticed that you're running low on petrol, I took your car to the station and I filled up petrol for you. Like that would be amazing. Or I noticed your car, it was a bit dirty and I'm taking it to get washed today for you. Like that would just like, wow, yes. But if we can do it for ourselves even, and also ask for that help. Gifts. So flowers, buying yourself flowers or buying yourself that special, so because I'm also gifts, high ranking gifts, love language, when I'm potentially having a really low day or my heart is feeling really sore and I really need to nurture myself, I take myself to one of the little delis that we have here in my area, and they have a really healthy but really like almost decadent, it's called a cosmic choc hot drink because it's winter here in South Africa, and I go and I have a cosmic choc because it makes me feel warm, but it's a gift to myself. I gift myself knowing that it's going to make me feel really good. Then we've got quality time as a self-care. And that's doing a hobby, getting creative, spending time with yourself. Could be through meditation. It could also mean just being alone with yourself and being okay with that. Reading a book. I know for me, if I read a book, I don't do anything else. I just get so absorbed in the book, so I don't do it often. But if you are a quality times love language, gifting yourself that time with yourself, for yourself. I'm just thinking now of a bath, like that could be a beautiful quality time self-care practice. If your partner is acts of service, running them a bath is another beautiful example. And then words of affirmation for self-care. How do you talk to yourself? Now, this is, to me, should be regardless of your love language, is to be really aware of how you talk to yourself. But in terms of loving yourself, and if you're a words of affirmation, how are you talking to yourself? How positively are you affirming yourself? And you can do that with affirmations. You can do that with mantras. You can do that with even journaling. So words of affirmation doesn't necessarily have to be verbal words. That can also be the written words, those little notes to yourself or to your partner, letting them know or letting yourself know that you mean a lot to yourself or to them. And so yeah, I hope you enjoyed getting to understand love languages from my perspective. Like I say, there's a lot of content. Dr. Gary Chapman has so much content out there for all walks of life, for all situations. So if this has really sparked something in you today, I just encourage you to dive deeper, take the quiz, get creative, get to know, what it is that how do you love? How do you feel loved? How can you love yourself within your love language? And particularly, how can we love our children just a little bit more differently that can really set them up for a solid foundation, for them to really feel loved would be absolutely amazing, especially in the times that we're in. So thank you for joining me today. Especially if you were live, thank you. And on the replay, I really appreciate your support. And drop comments below. What have you, what is your love language? And if you've got children, what are their love languages? If you have any suggestions, creative suggestions that on a particular love language that you felt worked for you or for others, let's really create a community around this, and let's spread and shine love. The world needs it, we need it, you need it, our children need it. So I just really want to bless each and every one of you from my heart to yours. Thank you for spending time with me today, and I look forward to seeing you on the other side and sending you every blessing of love and grace. Bye.